All right, chapter 3, we start talking about lines, and this first section again is going to be heavily emphasized on vocabulary. We're going to talk about lines and angles. By the end of the video, you should be able to identify parallel, perpendicular, and skew lines, as well as identify the angles formed by two lines and a transversal. So some of the vocab that that we're going to talk about, you've already heard. For an example, you know what parallel means. Parallel, maybe you know what they look like. Parallel, we have an abbreviation. It kind of looks like a number 11. If you see anything like this, that means parallel lines. Parallel lines never intersect, so they never meet, and they are also coplanar. Coplanar means that they lie on the same surface, and this will help you out with later on in the chapter. They have the same slope. That's why they never intersect. It's because they have the same slope. Perpendicular lines do intersect. Here's the abbreviation for perpendicular. They do intersect, and they intersect exactly at 90-degree angles. So they intersect at right angles. Skew lines, maybe you haven't heard of anything called skew lines. Those also never intersect. They're two lines that never intersect. They never meet. And the reason, one reason why they never intersect is because they are non-coplanar. So sometimes it's difficult for people to distinguish between parallel and non-coplanar, or parallel and skew lines. Parallel lines are on the same plane. Skew lines are not on the same plane. And then parallel planes and perpendicular planes. Parallel, again, means that they never meet, but this time instead of lines, we're talking about planes. So these are actually surfaces. Surfaces that never meet. And then because they have the same slope. And perpendicular planes are surfaces that that meet at right angles. Okay. So in this picture, some parallel lines, how I can show you that these lines are parallel is by using the arrows. So for example, if I put arrows like this, that means that those two lines are parallel. I could also say that this line GH is parallel to this line ED. I could also say that this back line FC is parallel or never touching AB. So by putting those four arrows on those four lines, I'm telling you that those are all going in the same direction and that they're parallel. Okay, what happens though if I want to show that AG and BH are parallel to each other? I can't put one arrow because then that would mean that those two lines would be parallel. So I'm going to put a double arrow. Just like you can do double tick marks, you can do double arrows. So this is going to be a little complicated with all the arrows, so I won't draw them all for you. If I wanted to say parallel lines, how I would write that is, let's say I went back to this example, AB. I'd say line AB is parallel to line segment GH. I'm sorry, this one, yeah, this one's H, GH. If I wanted to show you that they're perpendicular, I can just put that right angle, right? So if I wanted to talk about these two perpendicular lines, I could say that HD is perpendicular to line segment ED. There's lots of right angles here. This is another right angle. This is another right angle back here. There's lots of right angles in this picture. Here's a right angle right here. So there's lots of different answers. Skew lines, though. Let's talk about skew lines. Let's say I wanted to talk about this line ED. So I highlighted it for you. Cool. Well, I'm going to say I want to talk about these two lines. It looks like on my two-dimensional picture that these two yellow lines are going to intersect, but remember we're talking about a three-dimensional figure. So this is actually above this line, and it would never ever meet. So skew lines, we don't have an abbreviation. You would have to write that ED is skew to BH. And the order doesn't matter, so you could say BH is skew to ED as well. Okay, and so I'll show you a good example of this tomorrow in class. It's easier to see in person. Parallel planes, remember for lines you need two letters. For planes you need 3 letters. So let's say I wanted to talk about this yellow plane, and let's talk about the back plane. So let's talk about this back plane over here, this side. Okay, well, to name a plane you just need 3 points. So I'm going to pick any 3 points from this plane that I want to, and I'm going to call it GED. So plane GED is parallel to this back plane, and you can pick any points you want, any 3 points. So FAB, plane FAB. If I wanted to say that 2 planes were perpendicular, instead of using a parallel, I would just use a perpendicular. So let's practice that really fast. Again, if I give you segments or rays, they're going to be parallel. Just a quick hint: they're going to be parallel or skew if the lines that they exist on are also parallel or skew. So, for example, let's say in this picture, I give you another point right here, and I'll call this point Z. Well, if I tell you that these 2 lines are, there's my 3 arrows showing that they're parallel. If I could say that ZH is parallel to line segment ED, if I wanted to. I don't have to say JH, because ZH lies on JH. So that's what this little hint means. Okay, so the first, number 1, I want you guys to identify 2 pairs of parallel segments, perpendicular segments, skew segments, and parallel planes. And title this number 1 in your notes, please, and thank you. The next thing we're going to talk about are angle pairs. Now, you guys are already really good at talking about your, we've already talked about lots of angle pairs. We've talked about complementary angles. Complementary angles, remember, are 2 angles that add up to be 90 degrees. So that's a pair. We've talked about adjacent angles. Remember, that's 2 angles that share a ray. That's 2. Supplementary, 2 angles that add up to 180 degrees. Vertical, my favorite, right, are 2 angles that are not adjacent and are across from each other. So these are all different types of angle pairs. We're going to add 4 more. The first one is called corresponding angles. Corresponding angles lie, how can I say this? They lie on the same spot, I guess you should say. The same spot of the transversal and the other lines. Okay, so why this picture looks kind of weird is because we're going to now talk about 3 different types of lines. Here we have 2 lines, and notice this line that intersects both of those lines. This is called your transversal. Okay, so corresponding angles. Remember, we're just talking about 2, and pair means 2. Here's angle 1. I'm telling you a corresponding angle lays on the same spot of the transversal and of this other line. So notice how it's above the transversal. The other angle pair has to be above the transversal, and it has to be on the same side of this other line. So notice it's above the transversal and to the left of the line. So what we're going to do is we're going to look above the transversal and to the left of the line. So that means angle 1 and angle 3 are corresponding angles. All right, so they're in the same spot. Alternate interior angles. Alternate means that they're on the opposite side of the transversal. And interior means they're in between the lines, the other lines. So, for example, let's see, they have to be inside these lines. That's what interior means. These are inside the lines. These are outside the lines. Okay, so if I want to talk about angle 2, let's see. Well, they still, because we're talking about alternate interior angles, they still have to be inside somewhere. So it has to be one of these. But alternate means that since this one's above, you have to pick one that's below. And it can't be on the same line. It's got to be touching this other line. So angle 7. So for example of alternate interior angles would be angle 2 and angle 7. Let's see. Okay, so again, this is all the interior, and then the non-yellow stuff, that's all exterior. Okay, so number 3 says alternate exterior angles. So again, alternate means opposite sides of the transversal, and exterior means it's outside of the lines. And again, they have to be like touching one of the other lines. So let's see, exterior, now we're only talking about angle 1, 5, 4, and 8. So let's say I wanted to talk about angle 1. I'm going to put it in black. Here's angle 1. All right, well, let's see. It has to be touching this other line. It has to also be exterior. And see how this one's above the transversal? This is still my transversal. That means the other one, since it's alternate, this one has to be below and on touching this line outside. So angle 1 and angle 8 are alternate exterior angles. Okay. Last but not least, same side interior angles. Okay, so this time we're talking only about the interior angles. So we're still talking just about this part inside. There's all the space in between these two lines. And same side is different from alternate, right? So same side means the same side of the transversal. So remember, your transversal is the one that intersects those other two lines. So here's your transversal. Okay, so and these are your only interior angles. So if I want to talk about angle 2, the one that's on the same side but touching the other line would be angle 3. Okay, I know that's kind of tricky. Trust me, we talk extensively about these 4 different types of angle pairs throughout the entire chapter. So if you don't get it right away, that's okay. We're going to practice, practice, practice. Here, try this one, number 2. Try this one and try to find 2 different types of each pair of following angles. We're going to talk about this obviously a lot more in class. And fun fact of the video, did you know that if the longer your finger is, the faster your nail will grow? So if you look at your hands, obviously our biggest finger is our middle finger, right? So here's a little snippet of my hand. So since this is my largest finger, this nail is going to grow faster. In fact, it's going to grow 4 times faster than these other nails. What? Crazy. All right, yay for angles and lines. Woohoo!